Dorian Blake, a brilliant but eccentric book hunter and self-confessed bibliomaniac, heads the small firm Blake Associates Literary Investigations in San Francisco. From their loft-style office on Clementina Street, Dorian and his teammates track missing manuscripts, authenticate dubious discoveries, and navigate a shadow world of collectors, auction sharks, and occult bibliophiles. Each case is a mystery whose solution hinges on deep book lore, forensic bibliography, and treacherous human motives. Burning at Sutro, a Codex Chronicles mystery, starring Dorian Blake, Meera Patel, Clara Havelock, Leo Salgado. Prologue: Ash and Ephemera. Fire flickered behind the stained glass of old mission books, turning verses from the Vulgate into a scripture of smoke. When the first engine arrived, half the shop had already collapsed, scattering embers that danced like fireflies drunk on kerosene. The antique cash register rang itself open as if tolling a funeral bell. Brass coins rolled across the blistering oak floorboards and dropped, hissing, into puddles of steaming ink. Upstairs, a ceiling girder glowed cherry red before letting go with a shriek, punching through a stack of Everyman's library classics. The binding glue flared, the paper curled like petals in fast-forward decay. A first edition Steinbeck blew apart, pages rising in an updraft, each leaf briefly luminous before blackening to confetti. When firefighters finally reached proprietor Davy Grange, he was crouched behind the front counter, clutching a soot-covered cigar box. They hauled him coughing into the street. His only words, rasped between oxygen mask and terror, were, "They came for the Federal Writer's Guide, said it was cursed. Then they lit the place." Before dawn, Grange was dead, lungs seared past rescue. On a starched sheet at St. Mary's ER, a single soot-smudged clue lay beneath his hand, a charred slip of onion skin, the faintest ghost of a rubber stamp reading Sutro Baths, Stack C. Char scene, 4:10 a.m. Captain Holly Dupre of the SFFD Arson Task Force stood ankle-deep in slurry outside the ruins. White fog coiled around the trucks, wrapping hoses and ladders in ghostly gauze. Dupre noted 3 details she would later summarize, but never fully explain. A city-issue fire utility key had been twisted off in the front door cylinder, too much torque for casual use, suggesting panic or fury. The accelerant pattern showed not 1 but 2 ignition points, angled to herd the flames toward the shop's vintage dumbwaiter shaft, an intentional chimney effect. At the very center of the deepest burn scar, under a carbonized display case, she found the melted remains of a brass desk plaque. Books endure. She pocketed the twisted key for chain of custody, but the inscription on that plaque would haunt her, as if the fire itself had mocked the sentiment. Call out at 3 a.m. Dorian Blake's loft office smelled of lacquer and lightning. A thunderstorm had blown in off the Pacific, and Meera Patel was rewiring surge suppressors yet again. Blake, hunched over his roll-top desk, flicked a carbon paper telegram between ringed fingers, a nervous tick from his years cataloguing telegram ephemera. Lightning strobed, catching Leo Salgado's glasses as he refreshed the live feed of SFFD incident reports. "Leo, 3rd rare bookshop this month, boss." All 3 handled the same title. California, A Guide to the Golden State, WPA edition, 1939. Blake. The Works Progress Administration guidebooks aren't exactly incendiary literature. Meera, flat. Tell that to the fire marshal. Arson investigators found kerosene accelerant at Beresford Books, Pacific Arcana, and now Old Mission. From the mezzanine, half workshop, half herb garden, Clara Havelock polished a lockpick set while coaxing a stolen bonsai to recover from salt spray. Clara. All front doors forced with a city-issue fire key. Someone did homework. Blake rubbed eyes burned by microfilm fumes. Whoever the arsonist is, they care about that guidebook, and they've graduated from nighttime burglary to murder. He rose, catching his trench coat like a reflex. Gear up. We're visiting a morgue at sunrise. Interlude. Ink under the nails. During the ride to St. Mary's, Mira revealed she had once interned at the Library of Congress's Preservation Directorate. She recounted how nitrate negatives can self-combust if humidity spikes. Fire loves forgotten media, she said, voice taut. Leo, meanwhile, scrolled auction records, noting that a mint WPA guide had fetched $18,000 last year, but one annotated by a field writer named Hobart Hobie. Quinn remained unaccounted for, rumored lost in a 1959 flood. Clara passed forward a thermos of chicory coffee. Quinn was infamous for embedding political ciphers in margin doodles, she said. Got himself blacklisted. Blake's pulse quickened. And maybe black-bagged, he muttered, just loud enough for Rain to swallow most of the words. A footnote in charcoal. The coroner's fluorescent glare revealed Davy Grange's ruined lungs. They looked glazed, as if fire had blown through him like a kiln. On a steel tray lay what remained of the pamphlet slip, its stamp barely legible. Mira bent low, macro lens whirring. Click, whir. Sutro bath stacks were dismantled in '59 when the Cliff House warehouse flooded. Most of the salvaged WPA holdings went to a city depot. Leo. I'll cross-reference acquisitions, but we need a starting point. Blake thought of fog-haunted ruins where the ocean chewed old concrete. We start where the stamp points. Sutro. Tonight. City Hall. Records. Annex. Noon. Before nightfall, they detoured to the municipal archives, a Beaux-Arts labyrinth that smelled of lemon oil and bureaucratic ennui. A lone archivist, Donatella Sharp, recognized Blake from a prior escapade involving a forged land deed. This time she required zero cajoling. News of the morning fire had spread fast. She wheeled out a steel cart stacked with FWP storage requisitions. In microfilm drawer 17B, they located a transfer slip dated 14th May 1959. Crated materials, designation Stack C, Sutro baths, to be held in perpetuity pending cultural disbursement. Condition, salt compromised but stable. Donatella frowned. The crates never surfaced in our annual audits, either misfiled or misappropriated. Clara slid the requisition into a manila folder, or hidden for someone who knew exactly what was inside. Fog on cracked tidal pools. Twilight bled mauve as the team descended broken stairs of Sutro baths. Waves hammered basalt, gulls wheeled like torn paper. Damp wind carried the metallic tang of long-extinguished boiler smoke. Inside the cavernous former boiler room, Blake's flashlight traced salt-frosted crates stacked ceiling-high, munitions of forgotten paper. He brushed barnacle husks from a stencil. FWP-SANFRANC-ISCO Project Archive. C. Clara Pride planks. Inside, dozens of WPA guides sat wrapped in waxed craft, mildewed but intact. The wax had fused into parchment-like shells. Splitting one open released a smell of brine and vanillin, the chemistry of old pages surviving impossible odds. A sudden scrabbling echoed. A silhouette fled toward the cliff path, dropping a matchbook. Bay City Heating, 24-hour service. Clara sprinted, but the intruder vanished into fog. She returned, breathless, brandishing the matchbook. Arsonist moonlights as HVAC. Mira peeled wax paper from one guide. The flyleaf bore 3 inscriptions: Ex Libris City and County of San Francisco. Stack C. Restricted. Faint pencil. Page 312. Remember the fire. On the margin opposite, a ghostly watermark emerged when Mira's UV penlight passed over it, a phoenix rising from a pile of books. Blake thumbed to page 312, which described 1906 relief camps. A footnote read, Warehouse B, Cliff House, reserved for confiscated literature pending review by federal agents. Leo, cross-checking on his tablet, whispered, Confiscated literature? During 1906? Blake. Suppressed volumes, maybe political tracts. If someone thinks a hidden first print is stuffed between these pages, every bookseller who touched the guidebook becomes a target. New scene. Torsion of motive. Later, the team warmed themselves in a small cafe overlooking Ocean Beach. Rain hammered corrugated awnings. Surf lights blurred like auroras on wet asphalt. Blake doodled on a napkin. Arrows, dates, names. Mira stirred her tea. Suppose Quinn's cipher isn't pointing to a book, but to a crime, a historical wrong begging to be exposed. What if someone's burning the evidence to protect a reputation, not to profit? Clara raised an eyebrow. Reputations don't usually hire HVAC fronts. Profit and panic often share the same fuse. Leo interjected with a new discovery. R. Van, an SFFD firefighter suspended 3 years ago for unauthorized incendiary experimentation in the training yard. His last registered employer, Bay City Heating. Blake exhaled. So our arsonist knows fires intimately, both as weapon and language. The man with the burn map. Back at the loft, Leo compiled a heat map of all San Francisco antiquarian dealers who logged WPA guide sales in the last decade. Red polygons illuminated the map like angry petals. A scalene triangle honed in on North Beach, specifically Dolores and Sons' rare editions. While Leo crunched data, Blake walked the perimeter shelves, row upon row of codices, each spine a story. He paused at a glass case containing a scorched fragment of a Gutenberg leaf. He'd purchased it years ago as a reminder that even the first age of print had met flame. Books endure, he murmured, recalling the melted plaque at Old Mission. The phrase felt less like a statement of fact now, more like a dare to the universe. Midnight Stakeout. 1873. Howard housed Kensington Bindery, a 2-story brick shoebox wedged between a cannabis dispensary and an auto glass shop. At 11:42 p.m., a white utility van bearing Bay City Heating nosed to the curb. Clara, perched on the dispensary roof, whispered through comms. Driver's in a city boiler suit, carrying duffel. Looks heavy. Blake and Mira waited in shadows of an alley, respirators ready. The suspect jimmied the back door with a universal fire key, city-issue brass, lettered SFFD. Leo in earpiece. Gasoline jugs and a propane rig. He's escalating. Blake stepped forward, flashlight slicing the dark. SFFD badge number now. The man froze, gaunt, 40-ish, soot stains across jaw. A scorched turnout coat bore the name R. Van. Van, horse. I warned them. None listened. He hurled a smoke bomb. Grey plumes swallowed the corridor. Clara dropped through a skylight, swept Van's knees. They cuffed him before firefighters arrived, drawn by Mira's triggered sensor. Above them, bay windows reflected the neon sign of the dispensary across the street. Kind Bud, kinder world. Ironic, Blake thought. Tonight, nothing felt kind. Interrogation by lamplight. In a borrowed precinct interview room, Van sat shackled, eyes red from smoke, smelling of kerosene and guilt. Detective Inez Calderon, long acquainted with Blake's escapades, watched through the one-way mirror, arms folded like parenthesis around a dilemma. Blake. Why the guidebook? Van. It's a cancer. Those who profit from it burn. Mira slid an evidence photo across the table. The melted Books Endure plaque. 3 people are dead. Van, whisper. Only 3? More will come, unless you destroy it. He mentioned a name, Hobart Hobie Quinn, a WPA field writer rumoured sympathetic to anarchists. Page 312 is Quinn's cipher, Van said. Find his legend, you'll understand. Calderon leaned against the frame of the door. Her badge caught the overhead fluorescents and fractured them into little constellations across the dull linoleum. Arson plus homicide equals life, Van. Give us the mastermind, maybe you see daylight. Van's laugh was dry tinder. You can't cuff ashes. He lawyered up. Interrogation ended, yet Blake left with a puzzle. Quinn's cipher and a target list half fulfilled. Decrypting Hobie Quinn. Back at the loft, a war room board replaced the usual view of Telegraph Hill. Leo superimposed all known page 312 variants onto a 4K wall display. Marginal dots varied subtly, printer registration marks to the casual eye. Using a custom overlay program, he assigned each dot a binary value based on quadrant location. A constellation emerged, 4 coordinates along the coast. 3 matched the arson sites, the 4th pointed to Sutro Heights parapet. Mira and Clara layered old survey maps. Wind direction notations from 1907 storm diaries intersected with the cipher, forming a secondary pattern, a phoenix silhouette. Quinn had flair, Clara said, impressed despite herself. But so did whoever's continuing his riddle, Blake added. If Van acted on partial intel, someone else may be racing us for the prize. New scene. Shadows before the parapet. At 3:10, the team parked 2 blocks downhill and hiked slope under redwood canopies. The moon played hide-and-seek behind torn clouds. Halfway up, Clara halted, holding a gloved palm to the air. Tripwire, she whispered, pointing to a taut line ankle-high. Mira traced it to a crude flashbang rig angled toward the main trail. Someone had mined the approach. They disarmed it, only to find a second device farther along, a directional microphone wired to an RF transmitter. Leo, scanning with a handheld spectrum analyzer, detected an active frequency pinging to an unknown receiver near the Cliff House ruins. Whoever set this trap wanted an early warning system, Blake muttered. We're trespassing on occupied territory. Parapet revelations. Cold Pacific wind knifed through peacoats as the team scaled a rusted maintenance ladder to the parapet, a stone lookout crowning Sutro Heights. Beneath moon-silvered cypress, Clara detected fresh mortar seams in a balustrade block. She chiseled. The block loosened, revealing a tar paper parcel. Inside, a slim leather notebook, stamped HQ, filled with minuscule shorthand and Polaroid negatives. The Polaroids, once stabilized by Mira's chemical kit, revealed uniformed men torching crates marked Federal Confiscate, Literature. A page inside listed whistleblowers, many crossed out. Final entry, Deposited duplicate file, Pacific Storage Vault 7, password, Phoenix. Behind them, gravel shifted. Detective Calderon emerged carrying a flare gun. Her badge looked heavier tonight. Calderon. Drop it, Blake. Her voice shook, not with nerves, but with the moral weight of family legacy. Years ago, my grandfather served in WPA security detail. His name's on that list, one of the burners. If this goes public, my family's finished. Blake took a breath, remembering how flames devour without prejudice. Inez. Truth forgives nothing, but it frees everything. A second flashlight stabbed the dark. Dolores Alvarez stepped forward, revolver trembling. He's right, detective. We either own our past, or it owns us. 3 red tracers streaked overhead, military-grade flares launched from the beach. Silhouettes advanced, 2 of Van's accomplices, earlier released on bail by an anonymous donor. Clara drew her sidearm. Less debate, more retreat. They escaped with the notebook, Dolores overturning an old brass torch stand as improvised barricade. Behind them, flares fizzed out and fell into black water, hissing like angry serpents. Phoenix Key. With dawn, they converged on Pacific Storage, an Art Deco fortress downtown. Calderon, conscience pricked, secured a search warrant. Vault 7 smelled of cedar and chilled freon. Behind rows of paybox lockers, a safe door bore a phoenix emblem exactly matching Hobie Quinn's notebook doodle. Mira typed Phoenix into the keypad. Click. Inside, hermetically sealed canisters contain nitrate film reels and microfiche. Leo fed a reel into a portable viewer. Black and white sequences showed federal agents torching crates labeled with radical press names. Emma Goldman pamphlets, Wobbly's newsletters, abolitionist reprints. One soldier looked young, Latino, badge reading Calderon. Tears glossed Detective Calderon's eyes. My grandfather. I never knew. Blake placed a hand on her shoulder. History is fire. It both warms and consumes. Your choice now is what to do with the heat. They also found a ledger noting who handled the reels in 1968. R. Van, SFFD apprentice, assigned to dispose. Clara. Van tried destroying the evidence, but became obsessed instead, self-appointed purifier. Leo. And someone bankrolled him. See withdrawals marked HV-F. Mira. Initials for Hugo Voss Fenwick, the collector who tried buying Lux Tenebris last year. Blake exhaled. Voss Fenwick finances anything sensational he can later monopolize. He pays arsonists to create a mystery, then rescues the last surviving artifact for auction. Chasing the benefactor. Hugo Voss Fenwick lived aboard a retrofitted steam yacht moored near Pier 70, hosting salon soirees for Silicon Beach elites. Its funnel belched perfumed vapor scented with sandalwood, a nod to Victorian whimsy. That night, disguised as caterers, Blake's team infiltrated through the galley. Mira carried a tray of champagne flutes whose stems concealed graphite fiber lockpicks. Clara wore a sommelier's apron, lined with RFID jammers. Fenwick greeted patrons in a velvet smoking jacket, extolling the romance of endangered media. The salon walls were decked with LED panels looping silent footage of Notre Dame's 2019 fire, the 1966 Florence flood, Sarajevo's burnt library, a montage of bibliographic tragedies curated for maximum emotional liquidity. At 23:55, the yacht's lighting shifted to ember orange. Hidden foggers primed the air with theatrical smoke. Fenwick unveiled a glass case, housing, yes, the very WPA guidebook, pages scorched for dramatic panache. A witness to oppression, he proclaimed. Tonight, we bid for preservation. Clara's comm went live. He's wired a micro-igniter under the plinth, timed for midnight. He'll recreate a rescue before our eyes. Leo hacked the yacht's AV system. Hidden feed rolled footage of Fenwick earlier that evening, instructing Van's accomplices how to prime accelerant pouches. Guests gasped as the images replaced the looping library tragedies. Fenwick's smile faltered. Blake stepped atop a tasting table, Hobie Quinn's notebook held high. Ladies and gentlemen, the only authentic artifact here is conscience. Fenwick engineered murder to inflate provenance. Fenwick lunged. Clara locked his wrist. His antique lighter clattered on teak. Harbor patrol officers swarmed. Cuffs clicked. The micro-igniter remained unlit. History spared this time. 11. Trial by Archive. Weeks later, at federal court, reels were entered as Exhibit A. Van testified, unshackled, describing manipulation by Fenwick. His voice, though shaky, carried catharsis. The courtroom smelled faintly of ozone from older electronics, whirring to project century-old flames on screen. Dolores Alvarez founded a Sutro Heights Trust to digitize the confiscated literature. She enlisted Donatella Sharp and Captain Dupre, uniting archivists and firefighters in common cause. Detective Calderon, choosing transparency, provided family letters for public archive, along with a statement, "My grandfather burned books in fear. I preserve them in courage. Textbook companies offered six-figure sums for exclusive rights to the footage. The trust refused, instead releasing it under Creative Commons. Within days, university servers mirrored the files worldwide. A different sort of fire, viral and illuminating, spread. Epilogue. Rekindled. On a windswept promenade above Sutro baths, Blake tucked a fresh plaque into newly laid stone, in memory of those whose words were set alight, and of those who guard the kindling of truth. Mira sealed it with archival resin resistant to salt and sun. Leo streamed the dedication to librarians' networks while overlaying captions in 13 languages. Clara eyed the horizon for flare guns, but allowed herself, at last, to unclench her fists. Blake allowed a rare smile, until his phone chimed a ship's bell. Incoming. Library of Alexandria Foundation. He turned to his friends, coat whipping in the wind. Another day, another ember. Fog swallowed their laughter as they headed down the stone steps, ready to chase the next blaze before it could claim more pages or people.